Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ryan Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Listen, today I wanted to talk about a subject that's gonna make you wet. No, I'm not talking about that. Get your mind out of the lazy river. Of course I'm talking about... well, this video is making me wet. That's what she said. Let's talk about Rapids rides.
Now get ready. Here we go.
First of all, look at you coming back for another video. Thank you very much for joining. Today I wanted to talk about Rapids rides. It's one of those things that we all like to go to the park and experience from time to time. They're the best way to cool off on a hot summer day, and that's why the lines get really long for the rides and people love going on those things. So I wanted to talk about what makes those things tick. So let's talk about that real quick. I'm gonna go over a few basics, and then later on in the video I'm gonna talk about like how rides are laid out and look at some aerial shots from across the world, some basic rides. Let's cover some of the big manufacturers. Basically the biggest one is Intamin. Intamin's the biggest manufacturer of Rapids rides, followed by, I would say, there's a lot out there by Odie Hopkins. There's a lot out there by Zamperla, and a handful out there by Vekoma. And you pretty much name the manufacturer and they've made a Rapids ride at some point in time. Again, if you can dig, you could build a Rapids ride. Just kidding. But you can. Okay, so let's go over the two basic types of Rapids rides. And there's plenty of rides out there that have been fabricated to all sorts of different standards and different layouts, and the possibilities are endless, and I know I get 1,000 different comments. Well, what about this one ride, or what about that one ride? And the stuff I'm talking about is very generalized. It kind of goes over everything. But the basic Rapids rides, there's essentially two types of rides, and it all boils down to water storage. So the first type of ride is water stored in the ride, and then the water stored external to the ride. And by that I mean when they press the e-stop button, where does all that Rapids water go? It's got to go somewhere. So there is huge storage water ponds around the rides. Some of them use external ponds, and the water goes away from the ride into an external pond to be stored. And that allows the majority of the Rapids to be drained down for walking and inspection. The other type is a water stored in ride, where when they hit the e-stop, all the water just returns to the lowest spot. And if you notice, these rides, they have kind of like a dual water level mark around the pond, because when the water level is off, I should say when the ride is off, that water level is a couple feet higher depending on the size of that pond. Next, we're going to talk about tube design. So the boat, the raft, is one of the biggest functions of these rides. So there's typically a couple different designs. You have things that can seat 6 people, and you have things that can sit 9 people or even 12 people in a raft. So the rafts are made up of 2 components, well 3 really. You have the fiberglass raft that you sit in, and these things, despite what they look, they're actually extremely heavy. They weigh a couple tons just by themselves. And that's typically a fiberglass shell. And then you have the rubber tube that goes around the outside that holds all the air. That's what keeps the raft afloat while it's going down the Rapids ride. The tube is made up 2 different ways. The tube can have bladders on the inside, or the tube could be made bladderless, which was the original style Intamin made. Intamin made them. They were still bladders, but they called them chambers. So basically when they fabricated the ring, they put these big rubber walls, about 6 of them, 6 to 8, you know, depending on the size of the raft. They put these big rubber walls in there that were also airtight, essentially making a bladder, but not really. It was a chamber, because a couple companies came out with this, but the leader of it was a company called CPI. CPI came out with this interchangeable bladder system that they could use on their rings. And I'm going to post a video separate from this one. You could watch and see how it's not my video, it's CPI's video. But it shows you exactly how to change the bladder out in one of these tubes. And man, let me tell you, they make it look easy. That process is not quick or easy at all. But when you watch the video, it's like, oh, that's it? Oh, man, we can do that in 30 minutes. It's like, yeah, good luck. 2 hours later, you'll be sitting there still fighting with that bladder. Trust me, they're a pain, but it's way better than the older Intamin style where it's all in the chambers. So when we talk about the inside of the tub pretty much has high back and low back seats. The high back seats came from, unfortunately, accidents. Accidents is where we got that high back seat from, and the reason for that is that we had a lot of rafts in the industry in general. We started having them flip over in cases, and you have a raft that's laced together with the tube. You're talking 3 tons of weight, and when that flips over, the water rapids in most of these cases is only about 1.5 feet deep. It's actually very shallow in a lot of places. So when they flip over and the flotation goes above the water line, it pins that raft directly to the floor. And it's an entrapment hazard. And pretty much if you are in a raft that flips over on those low back styles and you get submerged in the water, you cannot lift that raft. Even if people jumped in immediately to help you, they cannot lift that raft either. That is a extremely dangerous and, history shows, deadly scenario. So the key thing with water ride safety is preventing that raft from flipping over. So in walks the high back seats, and what that does is that sits above people's heads. Well, there's a reason for that, because if that particular raft were to flip over, there's 2 things. One, it's going to be hard to get that all the way upside down because the seats are so high. It's going to pretty much tip on its side and try to roll and give people a chance to escape. The other one is that if it does flip all the way over, there's plenty of room between those high back seats that people can make an escape between there. So we talked about the tube, we talked about the raft itself. Let's talk about lacing. So despite contrary belief, lacing is not something that we get down at Victoria's Secret. I know, really? Yep, seriously, it's not. Lacing is actually the rubber ring that makes up the outside that's inflatable, and the fiberglass tub that sits inside have to be joined together somehow. Well, there's not nuts and bolts holding those things together for the majority of rafts out there. I'm sure there's a manufacturer or 2 that actually did do that. But the majority of them use lacing, or simply just rope, between the fiberglass and the rubber. And they go together in a zigzag and they crisscross each other between the rings and the eyelets. And that's called lacing a boat together. A small 9-person raft, it holds, let's see, it has 6 ropes that lace the raft all the way around. And they have to be X amount of inches, and they have to be tied in a certain way to lace it properly. Now what that does is that allows everything to flex and shift, because the main thing is that air expands and contracts as the ride gets hotter and colder, the day gets hotter and colder. So the bladders inflate and deflate just a little bit, which means the diameters change. So as it's going along through the day, so the rope is also flexible and allows that to kind of stretch and come back over time. So that's lacing. Next, I want to talk about the construction of the flume itself. So what is a flume? The flume is most of the time it's concrete, the concrete channel that makes up the rapid itself that goes all the way around the ride. The flume is constructed by the manufacturer. They say it has to be this wide, this deep, and they call out radiuses and banking underneath for the concrete that they want it to go. At that point in time, the manufacturer is done with that flume. They've called out the specs for it. They've called out how wide, deep it goes and where it goes. And then at that point, when the ride gets installed, there is a special person that comes from the manufacturer. I do not have firsthand experience with this person, but I am told when you have a Rapids ride installed, this is the person that comes. And this person comes down and decides where to put the weirs in the flume. Now, when I heard this, I thought to myself, I was like, wait a minute, doesn't the ride prints call out what weirs they should be placed where, at what angle? There's a lot of W's in this sentence, I know. And the person at the time told me, said, no, it's actually just one person that comes down and they just walk the flume and they get an idea of how the water is going to be flowing in this area. And they say, okay, let's put this size weir here. We're going to turn at a 30-degree angle. It's all very just set up by hand. So each rapids ride is completely unique. Literally, you probably couldn't build the same rapids ride twice and get the same outcome from it at all. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Which kind of moves us on to our next subject, which is inside what causes the rapids. And the rapids are actually caused by weirs, which are in the flume. And let me see if I can find a picture of a weir. So weirs are these big PVC pipes that stretch from one side of the flume to the other. And what causes the tumbling is as the water gets to the weir, it basically causes a miniature dam, and the water level builds up on one side of it. And then as the water starts to crest that weir, it tumbles on the other side. Well, once there's enough water coming, that tumbling gets larger and larger until you have this dip to a certain point. When you add even more water on top of that, the water is able to overcome the weir and it kind of smooths the flow out on the other side. So too much water, no rapids. Not enough water, really bad rapids. So you have to find the sweet spot and what works for the ride in the middle. Now, I talked earlier about how rafts could flip over. So in front of the weirs, we put these things on there called ramps. Typically 3 of them. Some parks do more. We put these ramps in front of the weirs. And what that is for a point where a boat has stalled midway down the flume and it's just dead. So that could happen sometimes as you release a boat, or there's a boat on the edge of being released, and then the ride e-stops for some reason. You lose the pumps, you lose the water flow. While the water is draining down, it could accidentally let go of that boat, and that boat could start going down the rapids. And then what will happen is at some point in time, that boat will ground out and just come to a stop right there in the middle of the rapids. The flume, I should say, because there's no rapids at that point in time. So the danger in that is that when you start the rapids back up, when you start those pumps back up, there is no soft start or recovery that you can do for this. So as that wall of water comes down that flume, it's going to pick that boat up and it's going to start moving it at a very quick pace right to those weirs. And if there's nothing in front of that weir, it could literally hit the weir and then flip over. At the park where I was at, we actually had, 2 rafts flip over in the flume from hitting weirs. And then they flipped over. I think, no, actually, one was from hitting a weir. The other one was from it got caught in the rapids at the lift base. And I'll explain that in a little bit. I actually did that one. Yeah, that was me. Don't worry, the ride was not, we weren't open at the time when this happened. The ride couldn't operate for the day. That sucked, but it wasn't open when we did that. This was morning time startup stuff. Okay, so let's talk about flow down the rapids. So at the very top of the ride, we got these giant pumps, and these things are huge. They sit in a shaft about 5 feet in diameter, and the ones I was used to, they sat down there about 25 feet at the bottom of that shaft, about 15 feet underwater. No, about 10 feet underwater. Because I remember you had a ladder and went down there, you had to put your whole body under, but you could go all the way underneath the water level and touch the top of the pump head at that point in time. So, maybe 6 to 8 feet underwater. I can't remember. Did we drain that ride to do that? I think we did drain some water out of it. I don't remember. But I had a particularly small rapids ride. So our whole ride was able to work off of 2 pumps. They're huge pumps, don't get me wrong. But when you look at, and I'll show you aerial photos of this later, when you look at some of the bigger rapids rides that have much longer course layouts, they use 3, 4, 5 pumps of that same exact size to keep that flow going. And one of the things they do when you have that flow going down there, there's areas where they're like they're like cattle sections where they just kind of widen out and nothing happens. Those are like little breaks in the rapids just to give the boats time and people time to settle out. Some rides use a block system, kind of like they just let boats go around. They're not counting boats in and out of the area, but they let boats go around, and then if they hit a ride stop or something, the pumps will stay running, but pneumatic gates will come up in those cattle areas and stop the boat. So you might have a pool, they might have 3 areas down with like roughly 6 boats per area in there. So it's kind of a way to stop the ride without stopping the ride. But there's a lot of pneumatics and welding and everything else that goes on underneath water. There's a lot of that stuff that happens. It's a lot to maintain on a rapids ride. Most parks don't want to do that. So you can also slow water down around corners, and that's simply by you take water that's coming in one side and it's going to leave the other, and you just put a tube between them. And that water, as it comes in, it starts building up pressure on one side, goes through that tube, pops back out on the other side. So what you get is around that U-turn at the bottom, the water bypasses through the tube, and you get a calmer, smoother tube down there. Very hard to spot. They're very hard to spot. You pretty much won't see them unless the ride is off. But they're typically tubes right before a corner. They have a big metal plate stretched across them, and it's literally a butterfly valve sitting in front of the tube, and you could turn those valves. Once the manufacturer sets them, there's really no need to adjust them after that. They're kind of set for life because there's no need to really mess with that stuff anymore. But they control the flow, the bypass flow, which smooths out water around corners. Quite helpful in some areas. Okay, so when we're talking about water flow, too much versus not enough. So I kind of touched on this a minute ago, and that's basically that when the water is going throughout the rapids, if you put in just barely enough water to go down there, you get a very violent rapid effect as it goes down. It really gets the boats moving. The boats go really fast down the flume because they are skimming the top of the surface. And I've talked with other people about this, and some other parks have had the opposite effect. They said the less water there was, the more tame it was. But from everything that I've seen with water rides in general, the less water there is, the more violent, best term for it, the more violent they are. And then if you keep adding water to it, it will just get more tame and more tame until you're eventually putting all the force of all those pumps down that flume, which where most people will be like, oh, it's a crazy ride, it's going to be awesome. It's like, nope, you're just casually drifting the boat around that flume. Really not much to watch down there. Not very exciting. You don't get very wet either. So too much water is not a good thing. This is the exact same thing on a water slide. Not amusement rides. We're talking... amusement rides, but we're talking like at a water park, like you would go down a water slide. It's the same exact thing. The less water there is going down that slide, the faster you will go, faster your body will go down that slide. You put a ton of water down that slide, you will go slower. It's the same exact thing as that. So on a rapids ride, there's a couple different ways to do that. Most rides have a swift water return somewhere. The particular styles of rides, I should say, like the Intamin styles, some of them had, the smaller ones like the one I worked on, they had a swift water return where we take water and we take both pumps at 100%, run the water up into the top, and then we would literally, there was a hole in the concrete with a ramp on the other side. Have you guys ever seen this massive waterfall looking thing at a rapids ride that was just pumping out a ton of water for like no reason? That is the control section. So what that was up on top, it was literally a square hole in the concrete in the flume, and this was an area where no boats were, no people were. It was sectioned off. But that square concrete hole, we literally just put boards in front of it and stacked them up. And the higher the boards were, the higher the water level was on the other side. So If we wanted more water to go down the flume, we would stack more boards on top of that to raise the water level up. If we wanted less water, we would take boards away so more water went out that hole and went back the swift water return. So we would have more water going back out of the return, and it was recycling. Some of the bigger rapids rides that need 4 pumps, 3 pumps to stay afloat and then keep going, they might opt to actually shut down one of the pumps to lower the water level. On the big rides, I don't see much of a swift water return on those, as I do just see more pump control and gate control around the pumps, because you can use 3 pumps on, and you can make the 4th one dead, and the 4th dead hole is essentially letting that water drain back down anyway. So more recently, rapids rides have started doing drops in them, and drops are kind of difficult to do because you have to get the entire boat, fiberglass included, and you have to get it to slide down a surface, which means a lot of care has to be on that slide. And they're not typically a very steep drop, they're very light. And then it has to be a very gradual pull up at the bottom. That way that boat at the bottom kind of skips over the water instead of really digging into it. But there's a lot of components underneath there. You have to keep the tube supported, and you have to keep the boat supported, because if you just support the boat without the tube digs into it, it could roll over. If you just support the tube without the boat, then you'll wear holes in the tube and bust those things out. They're pretty expensive. Those 9-person tubes, they were like, I want to say like $8,000 or $9,000 a ring. Pretty expensive. And that was before the bladders. The bladders were another $600 a bladder at the time. Keep in mind, I haven't bought any for 5.5, 6 years, but they were pretty pricey as well. So let's talk about startup. How do we start the rapids rides up? They're actually fairly easy to start up. There's not too much to them. Smaller water inside the ride type rapids, pretty easy. Simply just pumps, fire those things up. The ones I was on had 2 pumps. Again, these are dual wound stator pumps with a big impeller on the bottom. They require a lot, and I mean a lot of current to start up, because if you ever bought a pump, we talk about pumps and head pressure. They say, well, if I started to pump water, how high could I get this water before that pump physically can't push it anymore up? And that's called your head pressure. So this, you would say, well, that pump has 31 feet of head. For like a small pump, like you would use to pump out a basement or a sump or something like that, a small pump, 15 to 20 feet of head is about what you're going to get. About an opening that big, you can pump that much water about 15 to 20 feet up in the air before the pump can physically no longer do it. It can't spin the impeller fast enough to push the water up that high. So these water rides, rapid rides, are pretty impressive, because that huge pump that's sitting down there will take that 5-foot diameter column and lift the water 25 feet up into the air, that whole 5-foot column up in the air, and then start overflowing and start creating the water. So they're typically done in stages, because when you start one pump, if I recall properly, that pump pulls 1200 amps at 480 volts. It pulls 1200 amps while that pump is pulling up. Then it would typically wait about 1.5 minutes, so that pump is leveled off and comes back down, and it starts running at about 450 amps, somewhere right around there. And then the second pump would start up, and it would bring that up, and it would do the same thing. Now, from the time you hit start, and you had that 1.5 minute pump differential, it took about 3 minutes to fill the upper station area with water. To give you an idea, again, small water ride that I worked on, this was a small rapids, when the station level had what was called good water level, a switch went high and it said, okay, it was about 2.5 feet of water in the station. About 3 feet of water in the station. From when the station level said I have good water, that I have a high water level, you can look at that station and say, okay, it looks like the ride is ready to operate. It looks good. And then you turn around and look at the other end of the ride. And you look back there and you look at the flume. The flume is still dry. No water has made it down to that point yet. So you could stand there and you wait. About another minute and a half passes by. And then you start to see water trickle down there. And it's like, oh, there's the water down there. And then you wait about another minute. And now the flume appears like it has rapids in it at that point in time. Okay. Now, once you have the station's high and the flume level is correct, the ride required 4 minutes of running water before it could start anything up. Now, it was this time when we let the boats out. We normally work on the boats up on top, and you let them all out in the morning time, and they go through the rapids, and they come back down to the lift base. You close everything back up, and you start the lift back up, and you start sucking those boats up. It was at this point in time, that's when I knew I messed up. At this point in time, I was operating the ride in the morning, and I had a fault, and I couldn't get the lift to start back up. I want to say it was a problem with one of the entrance or exit gates up there, not like air gates. These are the gates that let the boats in and out. Anyone who's worked on a water ride knows it's like, yeah, you have problems with the gates. Water, sensors, pneumatics, they don't like it. In my case, it was pneumatic on one end, chain driven on the other end. But I remember I had all the boats stack up. I had like 9 boats. And since the water ride was a small water ride, the end of it had an abrupt, it was like almost a 90-degree corner before it came back to the lift. And the boats were stacked up all the way to that. And those last 2 boats were sitting in there, and the rapids were still kind of there where those boats were sitting. And those boats were sitting there just kind of doing this number the entire time. Well, I had troubles and I couldn't get it working. One of the leads from night shift had come out there because it was already late in the morning. And he was in early, I want to say. No, he was a day shift lead at that point. But he had come down and said to offer a hand to help me get that ride up and running. And he was like, look at those 2 boats out there. And I looked out. Well, the 2 boats had gone from doing this, and now one boat had gone down, and the other boat had nosed up. And now one was on top of the other one doing this number. And I was like, oh man. He's like, that's not good. I'm like, no, that's not good. He's like, so we talked about it for a second. He's just like, let's stop it. Okay, so we went over and hit the E-stop. Right before we hit the E-stop, that second boat that was on top of the other one just went like that, flipped over right on the spot. Flipped the boat in the flume. The ride wasn't even running. Flipped the boat over. It's like, man. I felt really bad because at that point in time, it was the end of my shift, and the night shift guys had to right that boat, which without a crane, there's nothing to grab a hold of. There's nothing to latch to flip one of those boats back over. They're heavy. They're awkward. It's a ring. It doesn't want to flip. Like, it is a bad thing. But it took them the rest of the night, but they finally got it flipped back over. And I think the note in the turnover the next day was like, don't let Ryan start that ride back up. It was like, noted. Okay, yeah. But everyone has their fair share of stuff they mess up throughout the time. But that was one of mine. Okay, so it took about, start to finish, it took about 9 minutes to establish the rapids flow from no water at all to full rapids running, and the ride could start running. About 9 minutes to do that. When there's a problem and you hit the E-stop, it took about 3.5 minutes for the rapids to stop. So you can imagine if you had a problem and something happened and you needed to stop that ride in a hurry, you have 3.5 minutes before it's called safe. And when you stop that ride, you'll hear 3.5 minutes after you stop it, you'll hear this very loud buzzer from all over the ride, just make this really loud industrial, just a sound. What that is a current alarm. So that is saying that once you have pressed a stop button, it starts a timer. And then about 4 minutes later, that timer goes off, and the manufacturer said at this point in time, there should be no more current left in the ride. By current, I'm not talking about electricity, I'm talking about swift water current, because everything in there is designed to generate current. So about 4 minutes after you hit the stop is when there's no more current left in the ride, and it's safe to jump in if you needed to. Not great, but that's what it is. So think about that next time someone's goofing off in a water ride. 4 minutes before the water stops, if you're even seen, right? One of the safety protocols is that we put people around the ride watching people on rafts. They had radios, they had phones to call up, and if they saw anybody messing around, they were able to call up and tell the people up in the tower to either, you could opt to stop the ride, or you can have security waiting if you keep telling those people not to do something. It passed by spotter 1, hey, stop doing that. Passed by spotter 2, hey, stop doing that. Spotter 3, it's like, yeah, by that point in time, they're calling security up, and people are probably going to be ejected from the park. Injuries on water rides, the number one injury is people getting up, typically with their seatbelts on them. People unbuckle a seatbelt and they stand up to avoid a waterfall. Yeah, normally they try to avoid the waterfall and then they fall over and hit their head because they stood up and tried to avoid the waterfall. Number one injury water rides get. People's stupidity reigns out every time. At this point in time in the video, if you haven't already, you should consider subscribing to this channel, because if you've made it this far in the video, you're obviously curious about what goes on, and I'd like to tell people more stuff about how these rides work and what happens in our day-to-day stuff out at amusement parks and things like that. So you should seriously consider subscribing. It is completely free for you. Unlike most channels, I'm going to say you don't have to click that little bell icon to notify when I upload new stuff, because if you don't want to subscribe in the first place, why would you want to be notified about that, right? But you can subscribe and then just stumble across new stuff. That's perfectly fine. Or you can hit the bell icon and you get notified when I post new stuff out there. And let me know in the comments what you think. You can always get a hold of me. I typically respond to a lot of comments, and I also have email. You can email me at RyanTheRideMechanic@yahoo.com. And I'm typically pretty responsive there. People have questions that they don't want to ask on YouTube. That's perfectly fine. Let's talk about off-season work real quick. During the off-season, we drain all the water out of the ride. And one of the things we do is simply just clean the pool, the big pool that holds all the water. We simply just go through and clean it. We use sump pumps, trash pumps, and basically suck out all the muck and dirt and everything else that has built up inside there down at the deep end of the water, right next to the pump inlets. That is very deep down there. Next to the deep end down there where the current comes into those pumps, and as it goes over and down, it kind of leaves two eddies on the side that swirl, and actually a third one in the middle too. In those areas, all the debris from the ride builds up in those. So there's literally mountains of trash down inside there that we have to get out. I mean, normally when we get the stuff out, we got guys down there with pitchforks and trash bags trying to take all old souvenir bottles and stuff like that. And I mean, it's about 30 or 40 trash bags worth of stuff down inside there. So it's a lot to clean out. And then at that point, we're checking fasteners, we're replacing boards in the run out. Everything is wood. The lift hill in particular is made out of this very special wood. It is wood. It's called bongozi, if I'm pronouncing it right, which I'm sure I'm not, but we always called it bongozi. People say, is that the same thing as ironwood? It's like, it's the same concept, but it's not actually ironwood. This stuff is grown off the coast of Africa, I want to say. The wood stays underwater its entire life. is incredibly strong stuff. It is almost as strong as steel, and just as heavy as steel too. It's extremely dense wood, but it's quite amazing. Anytime you see the lift hills on water rides, you see it looks like wood boards stretched across. Those are not just regular wood boards. Those are Bongozi wood. So they're extremely heavy. They do not float in water at all. So if you break a piece of wood off and it drops into the water, it simply just sinks right down to the bottom. So the Bongozi wood does not float. It sinks. The best part about that stuff is that it doesn't warp when it gets wet. In fact, it warps when it gets dry. So you could take a board brand new off a pallet and the thing could be shaped like a pretzel, and you just go to the ride and you throw it in the water and let it sit there for a couple days, come back to it, straight as an arrow. Pretty interesting stuff. But the reason, one of the reasons for that wood is because on water rides you can't put chain tensioners on the lift hill. The lift hill is basic construction. You have 2 return wheels, 2 bull wheels up at the top, a sprag on one side to prevent it from rolling backwards. And then on a normal lift, you need a take-up mechanism, a tensioner, to tension the lift hill. Otherwise, the bull wheels up on top will start skipping. Like they won't have any tension on the chain, so they just skip, and the chain won't actually drive forward. So because you can't have a big mechanism underwater to tension the chain, it's like, well, you could. It's like, but you would have to drain the ride every day to see this stuff. And most water rides, they don't drain that lift area, so they're constantly submerged underwater. So by using these big, heavy Bongozi boards all over the lift hill, that creates a sag on the back side of so much weight that weight actually tensions the chain properly and allows the lift hill to work. So the actual reason for those boards is the fact that they will sink and they will overweight the chain to cause it to tension while it's under use. That's the real reason for those Bongozi wood boards. Because realistically, you could do the same thing. You can lift the boats with aluminum. You could lift them with steel. You could pretty much lift them with anything. But once you get back down to the other side, it's not going to work well, especially steel, because it'll rot out because of all the porosity that the water rides create down there. And then let's see, also during rehab, we take the boats apart and we relace them every year, send some tubes out for repair. They have to get the rubber on the side replaced all the time. That rubber ring around the outside, no one ever thinks about it, but it's actually consumable. It gets chewed up as the boats are running around the ride. And then, like, once it starts getting through that rubber ring, you start getting into the actual structural ring, and you don't want to damage that. So you take it off and you send it back to the manufacturer. They take off the rubber and reapply it, and you get a new ring back, which is great. Put new seat belts in it, replace a lot of wood. There's a lot of wood around those rides that gets replaced. There's a lot of Bongozi used on everything. The vertical conveyors are also Bongozi. The boards on the side of the station are Bongozi. Pretty much everything is Bongozi. They say, well, what about pressure-treated wood? You don't want to use pressure-treated wood that people are going to walk on barefoot, because that has what inside of it? I believe it's arsenic inside pressure-treated wood. So you don't want arsenic splinters inside people's feet. Causes very bad infections and problems like that. So it's not good. If you want to use a off-brand wood up there, you use a hardwood. Use something like that, but not pressure-treated. Don't use that stuff. For some rides, you can pull the pumps out and service them. For other rides like ours, where the pumps were an absolute nightmare to pull out, they were put in such an area where we had no service roads running close by. We had no ability to get at them and take them apart easily. So to get them out, we would have to hire a crane in, 250-foot tall crane, and wedge it in this little tiny piece of the park so it could boom out far enough to pick the far pump and pick it up. And it was so much of a process, we said, okay, you know what? These pumps are going to be run to fail. It means we're going to run those pumps until they break. And they've got some warnings and stuff inside there, but parks typically don't go with warnings on that. They're like, yep, it's either going to work or it's not. And when it's not, the ride's going to be down. But also, parks typically don't have spare pumps sitting around. These things, when they're sitting around, they're like 8 feet tall. And no, larger than that, they're like 12 feet tall. And they're tough for even a great all-and-off, a big tractor to pick up and move around. They're extremely heavy. So parks typically don't have those sitting around. Some may, that's great. If your park had one, that's awesome. But my park did not have one. We did not have any spares for that thing. So when one of those pumps went out, the ride was down. And in the 14 years I was there, we lost those pumps. I think we lost them about 3 times that entire 14 years. So they last a good long time as well. And when they are out, we send them out for an emergency, help us rebuild, and they're back within a couple of days. And then the ride's back up and running like nothing ever happened. Pretty good. I think at this point in time, I want to look at some parks using Google Earth. So it's something I like to do. I like to go around and look at parks on Google Earth and see what parks do. I can identify lots of stuff. So let's take a look at some of these parks with Google Earth. Okay, we're going to start off here at, I'm probably going to murder this name, so you'll have to forgive me. Looks like Lolandia. It's Italian, so I am not sure. I have never been versed in the Italian. Closest I've asked was a tech that came out to the park that said, hey, tell me how to say this thing is still effing broken. It's a nice looking park though. So we're going to go look at their Rapids ride here, which is right actually down here in this corner. All right. This is the Rapide di Leonardo. I probably got that wrong too, but whatever. So one of the things that's really cool about this one, I actually I went to YouTube and watched a video on this because I was kind of unsure of this layout. I was like, man, what are they doing here? It's actually really cool. The probably can't see it that well, but this is the station building right here. You actually come out of the station building, make a 90-degree turn, and this guy right here is a vertical lift for the boats. So it's actually really cool. It lifts you up here, and then you come down and you spiral down this guy. And then you come out here. This would be the run out area. And then you come into the rest of the ride. Not too much of a rapids. You got a little bit of rapids out over here where you can see some of the weirs popping out, but not much. This one is pretty much a low water contained style where the water is stored at the ride. Actually here in these areas right here, you can see around in between these areas, and there's some back over here. This is all water storage in this area, but because there's really not to the river rapids, there's not much to them at all. So the water is pretty much just contained into that area. It's typically, I mean, you could see right here, it's deeper over on this end. I mean, these typically go down straight through stations, have a lot of mechanical stuff going on in them, so they need to get deep so they can shove all the mechanics inside there. But yeah, this is a water stored in ride. Here's the run out area. And then this was, I thought this was pretty cool. This little thing right here is a little makeshift waterfall that they put over there, and it's actually got a photo eye across it so that when the boat comes up to it, it shuts the waterfall off. And you're thinking, oh man, that's not fun. You don't get wet on that. But the number one injuries that I always received at the park from the Rapids ride was people getting up when they weren't supposed to, moving around the boat when they weren't supposed to, trying to avoid waterfalls. That was the number one thing. People would unbuckle, stand up, and move to the other side of the boat, and then the boat would always hit the wall, and then they'd fall over, hit their head on the side. So waterfalls are kind of nasty when it comes to rides, but that's a nice little park. This one is made by, This one is made by Zamperla. So this is a Zamperla Rapids ride. Next one, we're going over here into Walibi Holland in Belgium. They're going to the El Rio Grande, made by Vekoma. Probably saying this wrong too. Forgive me. Walibi Holland. Take a look around this park. Oh, so many good rides. So many good rides out here. Anyways, what we're here to look at is this guy right here, El Rio Grande. Grande. So, this one is made by Vekoma. And as you can see, we'll start up here. It is a straight pass-through station, so there's no turntable to it. Kind of makes things a little more complicated and a little more simple at the same time. It's not bad. This is a water stored out of ride. So you can see down here that all of this is dry. So this is the high part of the ride. It's dry, it's dry, it's dry. And then it starts to get wet right here. So here's where the natural water level sits, right here around this corner. And as you can see, a lot of the weirs are still underwater over here. But they're all underwater because once you get to this point over here, it's just open with this lake right here, with this man-made water storage. So what happens is all this water storage right here, when they start the pumps and start filling this guy up, all this water just naturally starts to drain down here and starts to go into where the pumps are. Imagining this is the pump house right here, since I'm seeing a water run out. So you got station and then pump house. There's probably more pumps on this side too. There normally is. And then water comes down here, and then it starts flowing over all the weirs under this bridge down around here. This is very common for a lot of these rides, especially these that don't have boat storage. The boats are stored on the lift hill. In this case, some of the stations, some of the lift hill. And these guys down here, they just kind of sit there all night long, and they just kind of wander around the corner as wind pushes them around. Their wind's very easy to push them, so you'll find them all over the place down here. But once you start the pumps up, this one right here will probably just sit down due to low water level, and then it will probably pick back up. This is one of the dangers of these rides when you start them up in the morning time, is that if this particular coach right here is valleyed, then it can't go anywhere. Sorry, too granular. So when two of them actually. So when the water comes around this corner and starts to push it, there's a high likelihood that this coach will actually get stuck in this weir or that weir, providing they don't have the weir ramps. It will get stuck right there, and then the rapids or this boat could hit it, and it could cause it to flip over right there in the middle of the ride as it's starting up. You typically don't have to evacuate people in these scenarios, because if you shut the ride down in this scenario, this one would be all the way back up here, and you would simply just walk out there and grab them and just tie the boat off, just a rope around something and tie it right there so it doesn't wander backwards out there. That's what you do in that. Anyways, that's a Rio Grande. Straight pass-through station and all that. Water stored off-ride. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to be going to the park. This is actually the closest park to me from where I live now. So it's about a 3-hour drive from where I am. Keep zooming in to that town of Altoona, and we get to Adventureland Resort. And this little guy, I didn't know it till I started going there, and this little guy has a troubled past to it. This is actually listed as closed. It's closed permanently. They accidentally had a death there, so this water ride was closed down. But it's something you can see a little bit of, even though we've come to the park here clearly in the off season. Got ice and everything covering it. The lake is frozen over there. But way out here off in this corner, which is now closed off to guests, is their old Raging River made by Intamin. This one is a water stored externally. So if you could see here, They've got this big area right here in the center is where all the water is stored. And then they've got their lift hill right here, station, lift exit. And then this would be where they stored all their boats and everything like that. And then this right over here is the pump house. This is where all the pumps are. So the water in the evening time is dropped off over here. Imagining this is a set of, this is like a Koffler dam that can be opened up. And the water is just drained out there. And then in the morning time, the gates closed. And then the pumps have to start up to refill the ride. At the same time, it will start to you'll fill the ride up and it will come back around. Then at some point you close the dams back over there and shut one or two of these pumps down, and they start feeding from this area down here now, and then the water is just free to circulate at that point in time, because this spot right here is actually the high spot of the ride and this is the low spot of the ride. But as you could tell, it's got the standard river rapids characteristics. Here's a lift. Here's the pump inlets down over here, straight through station, and then it's got some rollers to let the rafts come back out. And then as you can see down around here, it's got some calming pools or some cattle pools around here. These are typically put into rides just as a feature. It's to give people a little bit of a break, and you could add some scenery and stuff. The manufacturers started straying away from these because what you commonly ran into, since the flow of water would go away because it's no longer channeled, it's now drifting all over the place in this area. You would get boats just idling around inside of here, and sometimes one or two of them would come together and they'd literally wedge themselves and get stuck. Anytime you have stuck vehicles or stuck boats in a rapids ride, it spells disaster almost every time, because you have a free boat coming around that could impact the other two, and that's when you could start running into worries of flipping something over, which is one of these boats, that accident that happened here a handful of years ago. One of the boats had low bladders, and it ran low and hit one of these weirs. I think it was right in this area too. Or maybe it was this one over here, but it hit one of these weirs and flipped the boat over, trapping the people on the inside. And unfortunately, it's very sad. An 11-year-old boy lost his life there. But that's also one of the reasons why manufacturers now like making the boats with the really high seat backs on them, is so that if you were to flip the boat over, the seat backs actually act as a stand, and there's a chance, it's not a great chance, but there's a chance there's enough time you can free yourself and get out between those seat backs and swim to safety. That's not great, but that's what it is. That's one of the reasons why I don't like these rides at all, because there's a lot of room for failure in these things. But yeah, this is the closest one to me. You can see the weirs set up down there. Okay. Next up from here, we're going to go to California's Great America. And we're going to go look at the Rip Roaring Rapids. This is also an Intamin ride here. This was actually my home park, where I spent a long time growing up. And I went on pretty much all these rides, so I have a lot of good memories with them. But right over here in this area of the park, here is the Rip Roaring Rapids. This is also an Intamin creation, and it is external water storage. So you can see over here on the other side of this is a railroad track. Here is the water storage for the rapids, and here are the gates and pump stations off over to this side. So it is the same thing. This picture was taken with the ride in operation, as you can see the water flowing over the weirs, creating the rapids as it goes. But here is the station. Right here is a classic turntable style. So we have all the boats here. The way these boats are right now, I'm thinking this was maybe an early morning shot before the park opened and the ride was ready. No one's in the park. Maybe it was a run-up day. Park was closed, maybe. Can't tell you. I mean, got plenty of cars there. So we're going to say this is probably the morning time before park opening. So we're going to look here. Here's the station. And all the boats are waiting. This is where you would load to get on, go around the ride. This area off over here, this is boat storage. This little swing gate opens up and allows boats to come off the lift and then into here. And it comes around, and then this one has a pneumatic gate that stops all the boats right there, prevents them going any further. So one of the key things on these type of rides, this is very common of most Intamin rides, is that this channel right here is very necessary. So this is a water bypass channel. So what it does is it allows you to keep this area of the station full of water, but this water is very slow and calm moving through here because the majority of this water is bypassing right underneath here, and it's going out this way. At the same time, some of this water has also come around. I imagine from this area, maybe right here, I don't know specifically on this one, but it goes underneath in big tubes and then comes back around and goes right over to here and is dumped back out. This helps keep this side of the flume level as it goes out and around. So you have water coming theoretically from both sides. 3 areas. It comes down this way, from this way right here, from that way over there. And this particular one, it's pretty classic style. It uses 4 submerged pumps. You could see the cables running down inside there. And these pumps are much smaller than the ones like I was used to working on, but this is one way to control water flow because you can stop these pumps as needed to create less or more water. If more water was needed for some reason, or if one of these broke, you could turn on this guy. See, there's a dead hole right there. You could turn on that pump. Or if you wanted to lower the water level down for some reason, which on Rapids Ride is not good, less water there is, in my experience, the less water there is, the faster the rapids go and the more violent it becomes. So more water is better. And you come around here, you see all the weirs. You see the effect that the water has as it runs over the weirs. And then here's some of these cattle holding areas right here where boats are allowed just to kind of wander. And this is one of those rides where they said we want to make essentially a block system. So they put these big gates down in there. These are pneumatic teeter-totter style gates where they allow one boat through at a time when they want to. And this is a lot to break down underwater. I don't like these style rides just because there's just a lot mechanically to go wrong. Just seems like a lot of like a maintenance nuisance, basically. Here's another cattle holding area right here. And you got to have the big barrels where they're constantly turning to feed boats in there. You got boats stacked up right there. Funny story, I was on this ride one night when it broke down. And my boat was in, I was like 7 boats in here for some reason. It was very end of the night, so there was almost nobody there. And I was stuck right here in this corner, I kid you not, for like 45 minutes. It was at the end of the night, and I remember because I was on the ride by myself, and I was like, oh man, my parents are going to kill me. They didn't know where I was. I mean, for 45 minutes, they were like, where is this kid, right? So here's the water. This is the holding area coming from the holding area over here. And this would let the water back into the ride when they start the pumps back up. And then they would have to, when it's done at the end of the night, they would have to go ahead and open these up and let the waters flow back over into that area and possibly pump it up depending on how it's going. But you typically don't require things to be pumped up because you have to determine what's going to happen to all this during a power failure. So if your water storage is right here, this is typically your lowest spot of the ride. That way in a power failure, all the gates simply just open and it lets all the water just flow right back into storage, and you don't have to worry about flooding half the park at that point in time. Here is the lift inlet with the moving barrels again, and then this area underneath the lift is what we call a death trap. I mean, if you're already weird about water areas, this is a singular confined area that's very deep, typically 15-20 feet deep. And over here at the end, there's nothing but big pump inlets right there for all 4 of these pumps. Huge pump inlets. So there's extremely fast, swift current with a massive undertow to it. So never ever get in that area right there. And then as the lift crowns over, this is the lift motor right here for that. So that's Roaring Rapids, Rip Roaring Rapids at California's Great America. All right, from here we are going to go to good old-fashioned Cedar Point, way over in Sandusky, Ohio. Here we are at Cedar Point. All right. Here we are going to be looking at the Thunder Canyon made by Intamin. And then this is one of those rides that so far it's a different ride from what we've seen because its water intake is actually natural. So this area right here, this is part of Lake Erie. Yeah, this is part of Lake Erie. And see this little bubble shape right here? This is actually the water intake for the water ride. Now, typically when you have water rides, you have to maintain sanitary water, which means the chlorine level in the water has to be 1 part per million. But you say, well, in lakes, swimming pool, in big lakes and things like that, well, you can't maintain 1 part per million chlorine in there. But the water volume is so large that it's still deemed as sanitary for the most part. So it's funny, so as long as they actually suck the water in from Lake Erie at the beginning of the day and dump it back into Lake Erie at the end of the day, they can maintain what's considered a cleanly ride. So they don't have to put chlorine in it. I'm sure it has some sort of filtration to it at some point, and they maybe put some sort of ozone or something in there to try to keep some of the bacteria down. But when you have a large body of water like that, you don't really have to. It's kind of one of the advantages to doing this, but typically the EPA and everybody else is on top of them. So you think whatever cost savings they would have from not doing that is probably put into EPA stuff. So this ride we've got here, it looks like we have come across the park on a closed day. I don't see anybody in the park, it looks like. And then let's see, these trees are in the way. Let's see if we can, well, not quite. Okay, well, you can get a good idea here of here's some of the run out area, and here's the Spillwater Way back down inside of here. This looks to be the lowest part of the ride. There's a lift hill going up to the highest part of the ride. And let me switch it back out of here. So notice this is pretty common. This is an Intamin built ride as well. And you have the standard pump inlets way down here, and then you have 4 pumps with 1 dead hole right there. Probably used as a backup just in case one of these other pumps fail, the whole ride doesn't go down. And then this is your Spillwater gateway that goes back into the lake. So again, in the event of a power outage and you can't do anything, everything just goes right out probably this opening right here starts to overflow and just runs right back out there. In the morning time, this is all sitting at one level right here, probably deep inside this channel. So they probably start that pump right there, and it starts to fill this ride. Now, seeing how this creates the rapids up here with 3 pumps running, I'm guessing, complete guess, it probably takes about 20 minutes to fill this ride with water in the morning time. Got to remember, these pumps move a lot of water. So this is your standard Intamin turntable right here. Looks like direction of travel is coming from around this way, and there up into the ride there, and then it starts getting pretty covered, but you can see they got a nice little work their way all the way around there. They got a couple wading pools and stuff like that till it comes back down here, and then it looks to be there is the entrance gate to bring the boats back over this way. And then this is a holding area. This is sometimes used on a lot of rides where you could pull these boats off to the side and the maintenance team can stand off over here and casually work on them without having to be near in the ride area to do a bunch of stuff like that. So that is Thunder Canyon at Cedar Point. We are heading over to Roaring Rapids over at Six Flags Great America in Chicago. And here we are. Roaring Rapids. Looks like a nice one. This is also going to be a water stored outside of the ride. So you could see here we've caught this in its drained state. Looks like the park appears to be closed on a day like today. But you see it's pretty much completely drained out. We've got some water over here. In fact, it looks like we could see the rafts sitting out in the back. We have a pool for water storage, it looks like, down here. Probably connected back underneath here with this guy, which is a shallower pool. Again, anytime you have a big pool of water, that's a place to store water. So you don't have to raise it much in order to get this stuff to work right. So, I mean, you can literally just deal with a foot or two of water. It depends on how much flume you have. This particular one has got a fair amount of flume to it. So we could see down here, here's your water gates down here at the base. And here's some weirs running down into that. You can see weirs backwards through there. They got a couple of cattle areas for boats to gather and congregate. Got some other low-lying areas like that. Back to the station. Looks like they're using in-ground pneumatic lifting gates to block boats from going in or out of areas. Here's your standard lift. Another cattle gate down here at the bottom, stretched right across the base. And yeah, boat storage down there for pulling boats in and out of service. And it looks like they have another boat service area up here for doing maybe 1 or 2 at a time. That's where the access road is running to, so you could probably pull a boat from here, put it to there, and remove it completely. And then I imagine probably during the off-season, it's easy enough to run boats wherever else they can to get them out. I'm not sure about this one in particular. This might just be water storage on this side. It might not even be connected, I'm not too sure. But you could tell that the majority of water is stored right here with the chance to remove boats right here. So this is Roaring Rapids at Six Flags Great America. This is also an Intamin water ride. Typical Intamin lift with your pump inlets down here. Okay, we're going to move from Chicago over to California to Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. There we go. And this ride over here, this is going to be Whitewater Safari. This is a Intamin Rapids ride. This is a water stored internal. You can see we've caught this as park is closed and the water is drained. So this is pretty standard, and there's pretty good aerial shots of this one. So this will be good. You can see the boat storage right up here. Got all the rafts stored up here. And then this is your load turntable. This is the high point of the ride, and this is the low point of the ride right over here. And you can see you've got that standard Intamin lift area where you have this shelf comes along right here and then it stops. And then you have a drop off for the return of the lift hill. And then all the way up at the top, or down here, I should say, there's a drop off right there. And then right here, you see how it gets darker? Kind of hard to see in this. But right here, it gets a little bit darker. And then there's a slope that goes way down there. And then down here are the two pump inlets for these two pumps. There's one there and one there. And lift motor stored off over there. This guy's right here, those little guys right there, there is a drop down. You could see the 45-degree angle down right there. And that was to fill the gap between the lift hill and that 45-degree incline. That's where that one rapids ride where some people got killed because the boat got sucked underneath the lift hill. That was it right there. The boat drifted backwards in that area and got shoved down there. Their big problem was because they were running like every 3 lift boards. For some reason, that ride had the lift boards cut off of it. That was that major problem. But as you see, the water is mainly stored out here in this area. This is just a giant pool. And you can see with this ride in operation, there is one thing that gives away that type of ride is there is 2 water levels here. If you go out and look at this ride in operation along these walls here, there is a water level where the water is, and then if you look up about 1.5 feet, almost 2 feet above that water level, there's another water line that goes around the inside, because that is where the water sits stagnant. So in this particular guy, everything is dry, and then when the ride is off, there are pipes that connect around these heavy 180-degree turns. There are pipes that connect underneath there that allow water to quickly pass through to the other side without going around the corner. So that is a little trick Intamin uses to slow water down. And then it comes along here. You get some weirs that are out there. You can kind of even see the little weir ramps in front of them to prevent boats from hitting those things. Got some more weirs right around here. This is a cattle area, but it has fencing up along it, which means they don't allow the boats to wander in that area. So it's the only boat, the boat's only path is to travel straight down this. Some more weirs right over here. You can see the little ramps in front of them. And now in this particular ride, normally with the ride off, the water level sits right about here, somewhere in this area. It sits right there, and then all of this is underwater, which makes these really hard to inspect, as you can see right here. Cool. You can see the weir ramps, but there's no weir right here. There should be a weir right in that place. But this is also during the off season, so it looks kind of like, okay, it looks like that weir has been removed. The same with that one. You gotta remember, water ride stuff rots out so fast, you have to replace it all the time. So this is nothing abnormal here. And it looks like they're working on the lift at this point in time. So that is Whitewater Safari, made by Intamin at Discovery Kingdom. Okay. Let's stay with the California theme and head down south to Disney's California Adventure. What we are looking at here Actually, we got right into it pretty much. This little guy right here, this is the Grizzly River Run. This is also made by Intamin. This has a pretty cool little trick to it that a lot of people don't know. Because, again, Disney's really good at disguising everything that they do and how to get around it. So we'll look at this one in 3D a little bit if we can. So I do plan on spending a minute here. So this is a Intamin's Rapid Ride. They have this standard turntable station here that allows boats to come in this way, be positioned, and then casually loaded as it makes its way around here. So the station never really has to stop. And I know they have, I've been on this one plenty of times, they've got ADA loading right here, which is also makes it to where they don't really have to stop the station. This is one of the fewer rapid rides that allows the drop. It actually has a full-size drop on the Rapids ride, which is not that common simply because they're not the easiest thing to execute. And then here is the lift hill right here. Takes you up to the top and does a nice little scenic run through these caves and stuff. And you do a little S around, come back down around here, and you get that nice little drop at the end, which is a really cool feature. One of the cool things to do is look at this guy in 3D. Nifty, right? You got to hand it to Google. So cool. I love it. So if we go back right over here, you can see these boats sitting right here. This is their service area. And then here's the little jib crane sitting right out here to pick boats up from this side and move them back to that side. And then they've got a nice little water pooling area. This is, again, water storage, but the water is not stored on the ride for this one. So you say, well, where is the water stored? Well, you see over here, you have all this white fuzzy water off over here. Well, this is because this is water that has just been pumped. So there's obviously pumps in this area pumping water up here. In fact, I don't actually think they're in that area. I think the pumps are actually, or the inlets to them, are back off over this way underneath here. And they pump water up to here to fill the ride up. But then over here, you have different set of pumps that are used to drain and fill the ride. So actually, if you go stand off over in this area, let's see if I can do this here. Okay, so if we come back around here where we've got a little bit of a clearing, we can see this. Right here. So these are water level control pumps right here. It's kind of nifty. What they are constantly doing is over on the other side, once water is constantly flowing out, and these pumps right here are constantly bringing water in. So they're circulating water. Now, these are big giant spiral jacks with a large plate underneath them. So the higher they raise these up, the more water stays in. So in these cases, this water is coming out this way. So when they want water to return, there's another set of them over there. They drop those gates further down and it allows water to essentially go back down the drain. And then when they want to raise level, they pull those up. They can also do the same thing. They can deter water up this way and reverse these, not reverse the pumps, but they can let it drain or fill either way. So the pumps that fill would also be the pumps that drain, but they won't reverse. They'll simply just shut off and let gravity do the rest. Now, you say, where is that draining to? Well, let's see if we could see where it drains to. All right, here is the park, and here is the dirty little secret that not most people know, but it's not that dirty. It's fairly clean. Here's the Grizzly River Run right over here where we were looking at, and then here is the big, huge, massive lake that sits out in the middle of the park. And this is the Worlds of Color float that they're working on right now in this particular area. So all this is drained. So this is normally like 5-6 feet deep of water, easy, deeper in some of these areas. So there's a ton of water out over there, but if you notice this water over here, if you go there and look at it, the water is quite murky. You can't really see much into it. They put the murk in there on purpose to cover up all this stuff because they don't want people looking at it. It detracts from the natural beauty. So they put stuff inside of it to purposely make the water murky. So if you go over here and look at, Paradise Bay right here in this area, you see how this water is nice and clear? And there's no water on the other side of that bridge over here. But this water's clear, but there's no water. Well, there's a wall right here that separates these two. So this is a really cool water effect, right? Like, oh yeah, that's really nice. That's good. I'm glad. Why would they do such a thing? Well, if you stand over here and look at this stuff, let's see if we could see this here. If you stand out here and look, hey, that looks like the Monterey Bay. That's pretty cool. I've been to Monterey Bay a lot. That looks just like it. Everything. But if this is just for looks, why is there a second water level right here? You see that? And that's across everything. It's all the way down over there. Yeah. Is that really good theming on Disney's part, that they were able to make a second water level look like that? I mean, that's some pretty good artist work. And Disney's great at that, don't get me wrong. But actually, what you actually have here is that the water for the Grizzly River Run is actually stored here in this bay, right over here. So this is the water storage for the Grizzly River Run, and not many people know that. It's not a huge secret, you just don't see it that often. If you were to go by the Grizzly River Run and it was shut down for some reason and drained, which is very unusual because Disney keeps those pumps running almost no matter what. But if it was shut down and drained, you could walk over to this side of the park and this would be almost full. Now I'd imagine when they shut this down for rehab, they probably just pump out the excess water and drain the water. Probably pump it back over to this side so this level stays nice and low and gives that nice low tide effect looking there. But that's one of the cool things I wanted to point out about this ride, is that water from there is stored in there and pretty much nobody ever knows about it or thinks about it. It's one of those weird geeky things that I know. I think that's about enough for this video. If you liked it, please give it a little thumbs up down there and let me know what you thought. And I'd like to hear some of the stories. I'm sure with water rides, there is always a ton of stories out there from people from everywhere, from guests to mechanics to engineers. That just, I mean, water rides do not, they produce so many stories. Most of which are, hey, this is how it broke, which is, yeah, they break like crazy. Helpful tip for anyone out there: if you're ever working on a water ride or you're asked to work on a water ride, start with a torch or a cutoff wheel. Don't bother with wrenches and sockets and stuff like that because that hardware is frozen, rusted solid. So start with a torch and a cutoff wheel and you'll save yourself all sorts of time. There you go. That's like a tech tip. Enjoy that one. I'm Ryan the Ride Mechanic. Have a good day, and as always, stay off the air gates. Bye.